HOA President Linda just threw away $100,000, building a luxury bridge across my land. Without ever asking for permission, she believed that being in charge meant she controlled my property lines as well. But I didn't dial the police. I let her complete every last inch of construction. Why? Because the second that final bolt was secured, I arrived holding a court order, and now that pricey bridge is officially sealed behind my private gate. Watch how Linda completely unravels when she realizes she just handed me a $100,000 driveway. The tension started the very day Linda became HOA president. She didn't simply want to oversee the neighborhood. She wanted absolute control. Linda had long been fixated on the small creek that separated her sprawling estate from the border of my property. To her, it was an obstacle ruining her vision of a grand entrance. One morning, I woke to the roar of heavy equipment and the grind of industrial drills. I stepped outside with my coffee and found a full crew pouring concrete foundations right along the creek's edge. "Linda, what is going on?" I asked, doing my best to stay calm. She didn't even lift her eyes from her clipboard. "It's progress, Alex. The HOA approved a private access bridge to connect these two sections. It's a $100,000 investment that will boost everyone's property value," she said sharply, gesturing toward the rising steel frame. I reminded her that the HOA didn't own the land on my side of the water, but she only laughed. "I've reviewed the maps. Sweetheart, this is shared space. Don't stand in the way of the neighborhood's beauty." Her arrogance was so extreme she didn't even bother to wait for a formal survey. She assumed that because she held the president's title, the boundary line shifted at her command. For the next 3 weeks, I watched the bridge come together. It was a showcase of modern design: sleek black, steel, reinforced concrete, and premium lighting. Linda was out there daily, boasting to neighbors about her vision. She even had the nerve to tell me I should appreciate her upgrading my dull backyard. I kept quiet. I didn't shout, and I didn't call the authorities yet. Instead, I visited the county records office and retrieved the original 1920s land deed for my estate. While the bridge rose higher, I was busy hiring a private surveyor to measure every inch of my land. Linda believed she was constructing a bridge to her legacy, but I knew she was building a $100,000 mistake that would soon belong to me. As construction moved into its final phase, Linda's arrogance hit its peak. She had workers installing high-end LED spotlights and sleek glass railings, turning it into something that looked like the entrance to a 5-star resort. Every time I stepped outside, she gave me a smug little wave, convinced she had won the territorial war. But while she was busy selecting decorative plants for the entrance, I was meeting my surveyor. Late at night, we spent hours comparing old county deeds with updated GPS coordinates. The outcome was better than I had expected. The so-called common ground Linda kept referencing didn't exist the way she claimed. According to the original 1920s plot, my property line didn't stop at the creek's edge. It extended 10 feet beyond it, covering the exact location where the bridge's main support pillars were secured. Linda hadn't just built a bridge to my property. She had placed the entire foundation of a $100,000 structure directly on my land. I stood by as workers poured the final layer of polished concrete. I remained silent while they mounted a plaque that read the Linda Sterling Heritage Bridge. I even smiled when I saw her posing for photos of the HOA newsletter, proudly calling it her greatest contribution to the community. My attorney had already prepared the documents, but I instructed him to wait. I wanted the bridge fully completed. I wanted every cent of that $100,000 spent before I acted. The day before the grand opening ceremony, I received the certified survey and signed. Court order. I walked onto the bridge and stood in its center, feeling the solid concrete beneath my shoes. Linda rushed over, shouting that I was trespassing on HOA property and threatening to call the police. I calmly took a sip of my coffee and raised the paperwork. Actually, Linda, I said evenly, I'm standing in my own backyard, and it appears you've left a very expensive gift on my lawn. Her face turned a deep shade of purple as she snatched the documents from my hand. She studied the survey, her eyes flicking between the official red boundary line and the towering $100,000 bridge she had just finished. This can't be right. These records have to be fake. I'm the HOA president, and I can authorize community projects, she screamed, her voice carrying across the creek. I leaned against the glass railing she had chosen so carefully and smiled. The HOA governs shared spaces, Linda, but according to the county, this shared space is my private property. You didn't just build a bridge. You committed a major case of property encroachment. She called the local sheriff to have me removed, but when the deputy arrived and reviewed the certified court order, he told her there was nothing he could do. Ma'am, this is a civil issue, and based on this deed, he's standing on his own property, the officer said before leaving. That was when Linda realized her grand opening ceremony was over. But I wasn't done. I knew that if I left the bridge accessible, she would drag me into court for years while the neighborhood continued using it. I needed to send a message that was loud, clear, and made of solid iron. The very next morning, before sunrise, a flatbed truck arrived at my house carrying a custom 10-foot industrial security gate. While Linda was probably asleep, dreaming about her next HOA meeting, my crew drilled into the concrete that I now legally owned. We positioned the gate precisely on my property line, directly at the bridge's entrance. By 8 a.m., the $100,000 Linda Sterling Heritage Bridge had become a bridge to nowhere. I wrapped a thick heavy-duty chain around the bars and snapped a massive padlock closed. To finish it off, I bolted a sign onto the gate that read, "Private property. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted." When Linda stepped outside with her morning tea and saw the black iron bars blocking her masterpiece, she dropped her cup. She sprinted to the gate, rattling the iron bars like an inmate desperate for release. "You can't do this. That bridge cost the association a fortune," she shrieked. I strolled over slowly, the keys jingling in my hand. "Small correction, Linda. The association spent a fortune on a bridge that now sits entirely on my private property. And since I never proved this construction, I think I'll keep it as a very expensive garden decoration." The image of that locked gate threw the entire neighborhood into chaos. Linda panicked. She called an emergency HOA meeting and tried to force a vote for an easement to claim my land, but the neighbors, who had grown tired of her controlling behavior and constantly rising HOA fees, finally pushed back when they discovered she had risked $100,000 from the community's reserve fund on an unauthorized project without even ordering a proper survey. The atmosphere quickly shifted from mild curiosity to full-blown outrage. They weren't upset with me for locking the bridge. They were furious with Linda for blowing their money on something they couldn't even step foot on. Desperate to save face, Linda hired a lawyer and sued me for unjust enrichment, claiming I was benefiting unfairly from the structure they financed. My attorney, who thrived on property disputes, practically smiled. We fired back with a countersuit for trespassing, property damage, and illegal encroachment. I had documented every phase of the build and kept copies of the Warnings I gave her from the very first day. When the case reached court, the judge's ruling was fast and merciless. Because the bridge had been constructed on private property without permission, it legally belonged to the landowner, me. The court handed the HOA two options. They could either pay me a $5,000 monthly rental fee for using my land or tear down the entire $100,000 bridge at their own expense and restore my property to its original condition. The board members, finally realizing Linda had dragged them into a financial nightmare, wasted no time removing her as president. The new board couldn't afford the monthly fee, and they certainly didn't want to spend another $30,000 demolishing the bridge. Eventually, we negotiated a settlement. I agreed not to pursue additional damage claims if they transferred all ownership rights of the bridge to me and paid for a permanent high-security fence along my newly enforced boundary line. Linda was required to personally repay a portion of the wasted funds, and not long after, she sold her home and quietly left the neighborhood in embarrassment. Today, the former Linda Sterling Heritage Bridge serves as my own private walkway. I replaced her shiny plaque with one that reads, "Built by arrogance, owned by the law." Sometimes I notice a new HOA member standing across the creek staring at it, and I simply lift my coffee mug and wave. It's remarkable how peaceful a community becomes when the person in charge respects property lines. Linda thought she was paving a road to power, but all she really did was build me the most expensive backyard accessory this county has ever seen. This is my YouTube channel, DH Story. Don't forget to like, comment, and share the video. Thanks.